So this is an overview of the eiConsole, which is our graphical integrated development environment, or IDE. And when you open up this desktop application, this is the home screen that you're going to come to. This is called the Route File Management screen. And you can think of this as project folders here full of some number of routes, as we call them. You can see here that we have a lot of different project folders full of some client work that we've done in different various roles in EDI. But really what's happening behind the scenes here as we work with this tool is it's just writing some config files to a working directory or file system that we will actually push later to some area or source control where ultimately our EI platform component will pick those up and run those unattended. So I'm actually going to jump into this 837 folder here, Claim Professional, which is the 837P for provider. Open that up, you can see that we have about 6 routes here, all again indicative of some client work that we've maybe done, just some common scenarios. But I'm actually going to walk through this 837 to claim database, showing how we take in 837s and then load those into some kind of database. In this case, SQL. It could be non-SQL as well. Go ahead and open this up. And once we open up any given route, this is the screen that we will work from the entire time. So you can see it's very graphical. It's meant to be easy to work with. We kind of have our assembly line approach here where we move from left to right down the screen, kind of like a bouncy ball through each of these 7 stages to create our end-to-end workflow. Now we found this approach works best. So I'm actually going to walk through each of these 7 stages one by one from left to right, show you what's going on within this interface and also the other features that we do have. You can see here within this interface we do have inbound 837Ps coming in from our providers. We're going to take those in and we're going to go ahead and maybe map some of that data onto our actual database table in SQL here. So starting with the first stage here, our source system stage. So really no functionality yet. This is basically just for documentation purposes. We want to give it a name, maybe optionally some icon to represent it there. We can even tag some metadata down here below if we want to search for it later. But really, we really just want multiple resources working within this tool to be able to open any given route and see what's happening here within the workflow. So this graphical approach makes it a lot easier to do that. So moving on to our next stage here, the listener stage. This is our first functional stage. What's happening here within this configuration box, and again, just to reiterate that most of our tool is configuration boxes, drop downs, to make that easier for resources. We're really just defining what the connectivity protocol is up to that source system. So however we're going to receive or retrieve that data, we're going to define here. You can see right now that I have my listener type set on directory file. That means I'm just picking up the file locally stored to run that through as an example. But just to drop this down and show you what we do have available, as far as connectivity protocols go, we probably have everything you can think of. We can grab things out of AWS buckets, such as S3 buckets. We can query databases for information, grab things out of email if need be. All the flavors of FTP, SFTP here, especially working with EDI. We have our industry standard type connectivity protocols such as HL7 LLP, which is basically your MLLP or TCP/IP connection. All the flavors of HTTP for working with web services there. We even have some more esoteric things such as queuing systems like Kafka or RabbitMQ, MSMQ here. We have some non-SQL databases like Mongo and Hadoop, as well as full REST and SOAP support here, as well for web services, serial ports even. And then we even get into some more things that we have put in there from client work, such as throttling EDI files, chunking those out if we have big batch files, and just some offshoot older systems. If you do not see a connectivity protocol here that we have listed, you could always add your own. Anytime you see an ellipses within this tool, it's just a point of extension, so you can do that using Java or .NET. And you'll see here below just simple configuration boxes, maybe some required fields, but we try to leave all the defaults in here. Also to point out within the stage, we have what we call preprocessors. We probably have 150 of them out of the box, which you can read about on our website. But these are things like cleaning up the data, not necessarily a transformation, things such as decompression, decryption, just any type of massaging we might need to do to that data before we actually work with it. We also have some industry standard type processors in here to point out, such as EDI stint validation, which is a new feature that we have, completing stint validation levels from 1 through 7 now. So 1 through 3 are your basic syntax checking and things like that for EDI, and then when we get into levels 4 through 7, it's a little bit more custom to trading partner, or some more other type codes we need to go look up. We do have full support for that, as easy as using these checkboxes to apply that, and it'll actually give you a return and validation for that. So that is a new feature that is very, very helpful. We can also validate up here which version we're working with of X12, as well as which type of transaction we're working with there. Since we are an X12 partner, this is made available to us with those schemas. Moving to the next stage here, our source transform stage. What happens here happens in 2 parts below. So first on this left-hand side here is what we call our transformation module. So you'll see this drop down here. I right now have it set to EDI, but it could be something else. Really what this is doing is I'm just going to tell the system what the data format inbound is that we expect. In this case, I'm expecting EDI inbound. But just to show you what other options we have available, it could be something like a CSV or just some delimited file that we want to define. It could be another standard such as HL7 2.x or anything. It could be JSON if we're working with web services. It could even just be name value pairs or Excel sheets. But really, we just want to tell the system what we're expecting, and what's going to happen here is that's going to automatically transform whatever the format is into an XML representation of that data. We use XML as our canonical format. In this tool, everything gets converted into XML behind the scenes so that we can work with it within the data mapper and use that XSLT and have a repeatable process. And then everything gets transformed back out of XML down the line, which I will show you as we go, whatever it should be for the target format. Over here on the right-hand side is where I might actually get into an actual data mapping. I can choose to do the data mapping here on this source side, or I can choose to do it on the target side, or both. In this case, I have this box checked here called Use Direct Relay, which means I'm going to actually pass it through. I'm going to choose to do my mapping on the target side. Once I get to this middle stage here, our route stage, just 2 things I want to point out. First is our routing rules tab here. You can see right now this drop down is set to all targets, meaning that I want all that data that's coming inbound to go to just any target that's listed. I may have more than 1 target system here. In this case, I only have 1, but if I had more than 1, it would send that data to every target listed. But to drop that down, just to show you as an example, this feature is very popular. We can use XPath expressions here to create rules on where we want certain data to go based on some attribute within the message. So if I had inbound messages with maybe a location code as an attribute, or any other patient identifier attribute, I could then choose using XPath to say I want this message to go here but not here based on that, or any rule that you want to set up there. Also within this stage, I'll just point out, this is where we have our transaction monitors out of the box. So if I go ahead and pop this open, you can see that we do have a few different transaction monitors out of the box. So what happens in the event of an error of a message or a failure? We can choose to do things like send email alerts to some team to take action. More commonly, what we have here, which is a great feature, is what we call error route trigger. What this will do is kick off an entirely different route or workflow that you can customize that takes place in the event of an error. So if we had, maybe want to send an alert to some team, and on top of that, we want to archive the message or copy it or send it to another location, we can do that. Anything that we do within the error route trigger can be applied to multiple different routes. So once we set that up one time, we don't have to keep reinventing the wheel there. We can just keep applying that same route trigger to multiple routes, only creating that once. Now, once we get to the target transform stage here, you can see that we're on the other side of the middle. We're kind of just doing everything that we did before, only in reverse. So this stage works just like our source transform. It's just reversed down here in 2 parts. So this left-hand side now is where I might get into a data mapping. In this case, this is where my data mapping is, to actually map that EDI 837 data onto our SQL database table. Okay, so opening up our data mapper, this is a 3-pane data mapper. So just at a high level first for an overview of the mapper, this does open as blank. It is autonomous. It's meant to be that way so that we can apply multiple different mappings to different routes as need be. They're really just saved as XSLT files so that those can be reusable. When you look at this at a glance, everything over here on my left-hand side is what I'm mapping from, so the inbound data type. And then over here on this right-hand side is what I'm mapping onto, so where that data is going. In this case, you can see here on this left-hand side, I am working with EDI 837's inbound. This is my mapper. Because we're in XML format now, this is easily broken down so that no matter what the data format is, the process will work the same. So this is my 837 here on this left-hand side. You can see the looping structures here. You'll see here that we do have human readable text on this left-hand side for working with our EDI. It's what we call friendly names, and you can see here that we can break down into any of these nodes or fields within an EDI message and see exactly what the actual field representation is and be able to read that. So if you have resources that are not so familiar with EDI, this makes it a lot easier to go and find those different fields to be able to map them. Down below here, you can see that we even have an EDI tab here, so that if you want to look up exactly where that field comes from within the X12 documentation, it'll show you that. We also have areas for notes for different resources working and putting notes in there. But it's also going to show you down here, more importantly, if you're working with a sample file that you've brought in maybe from a trading partner, you can see that below here what that sample data looks like. So if we need to format a date time or something like that, it's very easy. The way that we bring this in is on each side we have what we call a format reader. In this drop down, you'll see that we can work with basically any data format you can think of or standard. So just to kind of run down through some of the examples of what we can work with, things like just flat files, CSVs again, any form of EDI, even the FHIR standards that we have out there, as well as all the versions of HL7, HL7 version 3 being your CDAs and things like that. Again, web services, JSON, Excel sheets. We can even bring in things like schemas or WSDLs, as well as XML or canonical format. This right-hand side is working much the same. We're going to go ahead and choose a format reader and decide what our data format is that we want to be outbound to the target format that we're mapping onto. Again, if I was going to choose maybe EDI in any case, you can see here that we can build that actually from the Washington Publishing Standard itself, or choose to use an external file that we have and just load that so it's exactly what we want as a template for our trading partner. In the center here is our mapping tree. This is all achievable through drag and drop from each side. You can think of everything in green as what we're mapping onto, and then the blue is where we're actually going and finding the corresponding node over here and dragging that on. So that's going to create our mapping. And in this case, we are using what we call SQL XML, which is something proprietary to us. You can find that here in the format reader. If I scroll down to the actual SQL XML format builder, it's just going to prompt you for some credentials for that database that you can enter, and it'll ask you which tables you want to work with, and we can pull in any amount of tables and all the corresponding columns to go ahead and use SQL functions to go ahead and map onto that. And in this case, we're actually using an insert statement here. So every time we get a new 837, we're going to go ahead and create a new insert into those columns below. You can see here to go ahead and map those on. So you can see with the checkboxes here that I am working with a few different tables, going ahead and just mapping some of this information into maybe my patient table with some demographic information, maybe some other tables that I have here, such as claim codes, which might be a separate table with different columns, and I can go ahead and all have that within the same mapping here in the center. And when I change the view, really what it's really just doing behind the scenes in that drag and drop is just writing W3C compliant XSLT, which is not proprietary to us in any way. So if you have resources familiar with this, you can go ahead and use this view, and anything that you do in here will show up in the other view and vice versa. We also have inline testing within this mapper, so you can feed it a sample file and push a button and see the output below here of what's been mapped already in this case. Now on the right hand side here of this stage is just like our source transform, again, is our transformation module. So you can see here in the drop down all the same options available there of how we're going to transform this back out of XML into whatever the outbound format should be. So again, all the same options available, the CSV, HL7, EDI, name value pairs, JSON. In this case, I have it set to no transformation because we're going to keep that in XML format, and that's going to go directly into our database. So I don't need to change it out of there. That's what that no transformation means. Moving on to our transport stage here, this works just like our listener stage. This is defining what the connectivity protocol is up to our target system. So again, all of those same different connectivity protocols out of the box are available here. You can see right now I have my transport type on SQL That's basically just going to prompt me for the credentials for my database. I can apply some other advanced security here as well. But again, all of those same connectivity protocols are available here for the transport that we had earlier in our listener stage. And again, we can extend that using this ellipses in Java or .NET. Within this stage, we also have the same processors that were available in our listener stage. We can choose to either apply those before the transport kicks off or after as well. So again, if we wanted to apply some of those maybe EDI snip validation level processors here, we could, or just some basic encryption, compression, any cleanup or formatting we might need to do here. So we can apply that either before this transport portion kicks off or again after. And our last stage here, again, just like the first, just kind of a bookend here for documentation purposes, just showing at a glance, what's happening within this given route or interface. So after we've kind of gone through and set this all up, we can choose to switch it over to our testing mode. So we do have a full inline testing and debugger. I can switch it over to testing mode and you'll see that it looks just like our editing mode. Just the only difference here is anywhere you see an arrow is where a test could potentially go at this point. Once I get into any of these stages and drill down and click on it, you'll see our testing configuration box show up here. And we can do a lot of things here, such as starting a test late or early. We can skip stages or end the test early if we need to. More importantly, we can also save tests if we're going to run those over and over again, especially if we're going to feed it a sample file each time because our listener is not fully set up. But I'm going to go ahead and hit execute test here. And we'll see everything go to either green check for success or red X for failure. So we went ahead and applied that, and we can see all of our green check marks. We do have a failure here on the end, which was expected, just to show you what that looks like. I do know that database is offline right now. But just to show you how the data moved through the system, first here on our listener stage, we picked up that 837. So this is an actual 837 in actual EDI format. This is what we took in as a sample file. As that moved through to the next stage here, first our transformation module there went ahead and converted that EDI file into an actual XML representation of that. So you can see here our friendly names, our human readable text applies there, and it actually lays it out in a better structure here in XML so that we can work with it within our data mapper. As we move to the target side here, you'll see that we did have a mapping there. So when I open that up, this is the XSLT mapping that we did. So you can see here, this is our insert statement that we made into those tables with each of the corresponding columns and fields that we went and drag and dropped onto there. Our transformation module in this stage did not kick off. We did not need a transformation. You'll see if I open that up, it'll be the same. Still in XML format. And if we were going to have a red X for failure, we're just going to go ahead and give you a stack trace. So in this case, I know that my database is down right now. And you'll see here that it's going to give me that stack trace showing that there is an error while connecting, which is expected. But no matter what the error will be, we'll get a full stack trace there to go ahead and make those changes. So we're really just going to kind of jump between the editing mode and testing mode, making those small changes back and forth as we work to create that end-to-end workflow or interface. As far as deploying, like I said, this is really just writing a file system here that will be stored either maybe to some kind of source control if you want to check that in, or just some location where that EI platform runtime engine will actually point at it and then run that unattended. So if I jump back now to my file management screen, you can see from here that we can also hot deploy if need be, using it right from this console. Otherwise, we would manually move that probably to source control.